All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the My 360 Mindset podcast. Got a really awesome guest here for you guys today. I'll give you a second to let him introduce himself here.
Yeah, so my name is Nick Carpenito. First of all, Jeremiah, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the invite. My name is Nick Carpenito. I'm the associate head coach for the Northeastern University women's hockey team. This is my 11th year at Northeastern, and we're a Division I program that plays in the Hockey East. Before Northeastern, I was at Union College for 1 year, which is in Schenectady, New York, and then before that, I spent 2 years at Elmira College out in Elmira, New York, and before that, I was actually at Northeastern as a student. So, kind of
Nice.
full circle for me. So, I've coached at the club level. I've coached Division III. I've coached Division I. So, I've been kind of all over the map here, and hopefully, Northeastern's a place that I stay for a long time.
That's awesome to hear. I like the whole coming full circle kind of thing. I didn't know you went to school there too, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
really cool that you got to go back.
Yeah, it's nice. That's for sure. I'm from this area too, so it's certainly it's helpful. It's definitely helpful to know the area a
Yeah,
little bit more.
absolutely. And I mean, it's a great area, like we were talking about before. So we like the area out here.
We do. We love it. A little different than Wisconsin. It's still
A
good.
little bit, but it's it's pretty close to it. Just people are a little different, but it's same weather, same kind of environment. It's not too different for me.
Accent, probably a little bit more defensive driving, if I were to guess.
Yeah, a little bit. Driving's a bit more intense out
Yeah,
here, that's for sure.
yeah, for sure.
Lot less cows and fields than I'm used to, but
Oh yeah.
yeah. All right, so let's get into this topics here for you. So first thing, just to get a grasp on what your program does. What do you guys all incorporate, or what does mental training all entail for you guys?
Yeah, so I think mental health, and the mental side of hockey is something that has really come to the forefront in the last definitely the last few years. Like there's been a big push for it, I think. But it's been a little bit of a background thing for what I feel is too long, just based on what we've learned from research and what we've learned about players over the past little while here. So we do have resources on campus. We've had sports psychologists on staff. We've done a lot of neurological work. I haven't. That's way above what I can do, but we brought in specialists for that. And then obviously we have from a coaching standpoint, we have certain tools that we like to educate our players on, whether it's visualization, whether it's having kind of like a reset mantra. uh, we did a little bit of work with some players. I'm sure you're well aware of this, but kind of like the alter ego approach. So there's different tools that we use, and I think it's cool because as coaches, you really got to know the players individually. There are some tools,
Mhm.
and there are some tools that work for other people, and there's some tools that don't work for people. Just figuring out kind of navigating that as a coach, and um, making sure that you help implement it. But at the end of the day, when it comes with most mental things, most mental tools, it's up to the player to kind of follow up on. It's just like lifting weights, just like practicing a skill. It's a tool that you have to continuously work on, and we'll give the players the resources to do it, but at the end of the day, it's primarily on them to execute.
Yeah, I two things that I love that you touched on there was that not everything's going to work instantly for every player. Like they're at their own speeds. Sometimes certain things will work. Like an imagery thing may work for one athlete and may not help another athlete at all, right? So
Yep.
I think that's a huge part of mental training is you got to figure out what works for the individual, because, like you said, everyone's different. But also the second thing I love that we hit on a lot is that it's just like being in a gym. Your brain's a muscle. You got to keep working on it. It's not you do this one time and you're going to be a master at visualization just because you had someone come in and teach you it. So I think that's awesome that you're thinking like that, because a lot of coaches, when we introduce this stuff, they're like, you can come in, have a session with their team, and they'll be amazing. They'll be these mental skills rock stars, right? But so it's nice to see that you have that patience and understanding that it takes time. It's not an instant overnight thing.
It's tough, like I think from a generational standpoint, this generation especially is very like short-term oriented, like see results quick. And um, definitely some things out there that could promote that, but I think the stuff that like building a habit and the really important stuff, I think would build over time, and you gotta work on it consistently.
Absolutely. And one thing that you had mentioned a little bit before, that you kind of teach, like a reset kind of technique and skills. That one is one of the ones where if someone like, I really need that like instant like change and I want to feel something, that's usually a place that we start doing like we call it a reset and refocus,
Mhm.
because it's building off that physiological response and people can feel that right away, right? If they get panicked, take some deep breaths, do some box breathing and reset, and they can feel that. So that's kind of something that we give people if they're like, I need results now, that's where we can start. So I love that you're doing that too.
Yeah, yeah. There's some players that you see him after a shift, and it's funny. There's one player specifically that I'm thinking of. She goes to the end of the bench, she does it, and everybody just leaves her alone until she does her thing. Like we
Mhm.
promote communication after shifts and stuff like that. But a lot of our players take the mental side of things very seriously. So when they see someone doing something like that, they understand. All right, this is what's going on. We'll give her a second to do her thing, and then we'll get back into it as a group.
And that's great to hear that, players are allowing that space because, I mean, just thinking back to when I was playing, if I would have tried to do that, I feel like I would have been either made fun of or someone would have made a comment about something that I was doing. So it's great that, that you guys have that safe space for someone to actually, you know, apply those skills. Yeah, I think that goes back to like that culture shift that you kind of were bringing up before. Like, this is kind of just starting to come into the hockey realm, in the past maybe 5 to 10 years, where people actually like are allowing that space to be there. So I love that. Love to hear that. Um, so another thing that you had mentioned that you do, is some visualization.
Yeah.
Do you do that with the team, or is that something that you have like the sports psych staff do?
Yeah, so I think that's like an individual basis type thing. We, like I said, there's certain things that work for some players, and there's certain things that don't. So, for any of this stuff, it's never, hey, you have to do this. It's always, here's a tool, try it out. If it works well for you, run with it. So, you'll see players taping their sticks in the stands before games, and they're up there. I think they're kind of in autopilot with their taping, but they're more like looking at the ice, looking at visualizing certain situations that they find themselves in quite a bit. I think with visualization, you always want to kind of hone in on the plays that are pretty highly concentrated in a game, which I think with
Mhm.
experience as a player, you kind of know what, especially with what your role is, what's going to happen more than not. So really kind of honing in on those. So it's never a hey, here's this, you got to do it. It's more of a, like I said, here's a tool, utilize it if you feel like it works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's great to hear because you're not forcing someone to do something they're not going to get any benefit out of it if they
Exactly.
don't want to do it, right?
Exactly. There has to
Um,
be buy-in, just like with anything you do, and if you're not
yep,
bought in, if you don't believe it works, then it's not gonna work.
yep, absolutely. Kind of piggybacking off that visualization because we were talking about how they might do it pregame. When there's a high pressure game or like right now, even you guys got a big tournament going on, a lot of pressure to perform.
Yeah.
How do you help your team prepare mentally for that high pressure situation?
Yeah, so we had our first round of the Bean Pot yesterday, which is a tournament between us, Boston College, Harvard, and Boston University. Which is a big deal. Around this area on both the men and the women's side. So, it's definitely a tough navigation to keep the emotions in check because it's a high emotion, high pressure situation. So just yesterday, like our message, and we hosted the first round. We actually set a record for a women's hockey attendance yesterday, which was amazing.
Congrats. Yeah.
Our rink, yeah. So the fan section was going nuts, and the building was loud. The atmosphere was absolutely electric. So our biggest message to our team was keep the compete high, but keep the emotions level. As level as you can. We know they're going to fluctuate. They fluctuate every game, but especially in high pressure games like that, it's going to, the highs can get really high and the lows can get really low. So, Our message consistently throughout that game was, let's try and stay somewhere in the middle. Us as coaches, we can preach that all day, but I think, where it's the most impactful, it comes from our leadership group, players that have been in those situations before. And if I'm a freshman on a team and something good or something bad happens, I think the first person I'm probably looking at is an upperclassman. And if an upperclassman's emotions are going wild, then I'm probably going to feed into that. But we're fortunate, at least at our school, within our program, that our leadership, they do a really, really good job of leading by example, both on the ice, off the ice, from a skill perspective, from a compete perspective, but most importantly for situations like that, in between the ears, they really do a great job staying level. And if they feel that energy is too high, they'll bring it down a little bit. If the energy is too low collectively, they'll try and do their best to bring it up.
I mean, the first thing that sticks out is something that we preach, because it's really bad. You're just down into that valley of despair, right? So
Yeah.
making sure you maintain that like level-headedness as much as possible. That's something we love to preach. So I'd love to hear that you're doing the same thing. And then just to kind of follow up on like the leadership that you have on the team, how do you foster that kind of positive and supportive team culture that you have on the team? Like, is there anything that you or the coaches do to help them?
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think culture, a lot of it comes from the people you bring into your program. So, when we go out and recruit, we're very, very particular with the type of person that we want to bring in. I think evaluating the hockey side of things for us, it's not super tough. Like I feel like at this point in most of our coaching careers, we have an amazing staff. We have a pretty good idea of what we're looking for on the ice, but I think the toughest part is, evaluating the off ice stuff. And we're not with those players 24/7, right? So we don't know what they're doing away from the rink all the time. We don't know how they treat their teammates, how they treat their families, how they react in pressure situations. Even more importantly, how they react when they're playing up against a weaker team. Do they just play down to their competition, or, are they still consistent in that? You know, Certainly a lot of it comes from the recruiting and the type of person that you're bringing in. But, as far as the culture and the leadership that we have, we don't, as a staff, do a ton. Like, obviously we give them exercises and we give them resources. But at the end of the day, our leaders are pretty much chosen by their peers, right? We always have an idea of who our leadership group is going to be as a coaching staff, but especially the last few years, like our team, they all vote. It's never like a hey, give me your top three. It's always, give me your top three or top four, and give us a why for each person. And the team's been really in tune the last few years with who they feel is best to lead the group. And I think one of the best parts about our leadership the last few years is that there's been such a great mix of personality within those groups. So you have like your serious one, you have your vocal leader, you have your lead by example type of person, and collectively they're kind of able to attack different things from very different angles. The one thing I think that impresses me most about our leadership is how they lead, or how they lean on past leaders. So, we've had some incredible leaders come through our program. And one person that kind of kickstarted, where we're at as a program is Kendall Coyne. Kendall Coyne Schofield, who's an incredible player. She's a leader on the national team for the U.S. She's a leader for her professional team, the Minnesota Frost. She's someone that the leaders a couple years after her would call, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? How did you approach this? And that's kind of snowballed. We've had, Brittany Bogolski. We've had uh, who else am I got in my back pocket here? We've had Paige Capistrand, who, she is special because she was someone that was kind of in and out of the lineup the first couple years, and
Mm-hmm.
so she was amazing because she cared so much about Northeastern, and she was such a great relationship developer that she was very in tune to each individual player, which is really, really important for a leader. And you go past Paige Capistran, and you have Aaron Frankel, you have Alina Mueller. They've all depended on one another as that captain unit, and it's just kind of snowballed into what we are today culturally.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, the it sounds like, you guys don't need to perhaps give that support as coaches as like a lot, whereas they are able to support each other, and it really builds that like sense of a team and a
Right.
family almost, rather than just you have the best players thrown together and you got to figure it out kind of thing.
One thing we really do promote a lot from at least our end as coaches is communication. Like you even think about it in just everyday life. Like a lot of times, I don't want to put a percentage on it, but I feel like a large majority of the time, any conflict or any issues that happens within a group, it's probably from miscommunication somewhere along the line. So if there's ever an issue between a couple players, which knock on wood, we haven't really had that. One thing we do, we encourage go out and have a cup of coffee with that person. Something like as simple as that, just an open communication can solve a lot of issues and clear up a lot of things that were probably blown out of proportion. But at least if there was a serious concern, at least now everybody's input is everybody involved. Their input is kind of in the middle, and you can at least find a compromise or potentially find a way to move on from it.
Yeah, I love hearing that because effective communication is a skill that we teach a lot too. Because, like you said, a lot of problems can simply be fixed just by talking about it. Just
Yep,
because people get in their own head, they run scenarios in their head that never happen, maybe never will happen, and they just run with them, and it lets that build up and like eat away at them. So,
for sure.
allowing them that space to just talk sometimes is enough. So I
Yep,
love to hear that. Because a lot
good.
of times college coaches and that high level, they'll be like, "That's not us. We don't care about you. You fix your problems, and don't bring it to the team," kind of thing. Some we hear a lot. So I'm glad to hear that you're not that way.
Yeah, yeah, we try not to be, and communication it's so important on off the ice everywhere. So, and I think with texting and Snapchat and all that stuff, I think the face-to-face communication is kind of becoming a bit of a lost art. So, we definitely promote that. I mean, some conversations are difficult, and that's life. It's okay, to have
Mhm.
difficult conversations. So if you need a safe space for it, you can do that, and that's definitely something we promote quite a bit within our program.
I think that's huge to building that team cohesion. Being able to have that open space. So that's awesome to hear. I mean, this may piggyback off the strong leadership on the team, but just kind of going to shift it over to like a resilience standpoint. So, when you guys have a tough game, a tough period of like time that you have, what do you help the players at all like bounce back from these setbacks or any strategies that you may use for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always no game's perfect, right? Like there's always things you can improve on a little bit, So I think one really important aspect of it is to not overload with information. Pick a couple like really important key points, present that to the team, say, things aren't going well, say we're not getting good scoring opportunities, something like that. Like, hey, we need to do a better job getting to the front of the net. Something small. At the end of the day, we practice probably about 4 times before we play a game, and it's usually keying in on whatever our next opponent is, or potentially a couple weaknesses that we had the last time we played. But more than anything, like they know what we have to do, so it's might just be shifting the focus from one thing to another, kind of allowing them to reset that way and focus on a couple things. And we definitely do have a pretty resilient group, so once they get in the locker room, they obviously have their conversations within the team. We try not to meddle too much as a staff, but we'll just give them a couple key points to focus on and let them run.
Yeah, and I think letting the players have that like a little bit of autonomy on fixing the problems themselves a little bit before you come in and as a coaching staff, like, hey, this is what needs to be changed. I think that's awesome because a big thing with motivation that we see is that it's called ARC, autonomy, relatedness, connectedness. That's a sports psych thing, but that's you hit all those. Right? The allowing the players that the feel all those really helps to keep them motivated and resilient to what's going on around them. So that's amazing to hear. Just kind of, I guess, piggybacking off of that and the motivation aspect, is there, your season's a grind, obviously. You guys got a long season, a lot of
Yep.
practices. What do you guys do anything like that you can think of off the top of your head to make sure that that motivation level stays high throughout the season or as high as it can be?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it comes from recruiting again. Like the type of players that we look for, we want intrinsically motivated people, right? So we want people that want to get better because they want to get better, not because there's some sort of external reward, hanging above their head, and the reason that we look for people like that is, as a coaching staff, we're with our players 2, maybe 3 hours a day. So realistically, obviously they're getting a good amount of information, and they're getting a good amount of whatever for their craft with us for those 2, 3 hours a day. But what are they doing the other 21 hours? Are they getting enough sleep? Are they, managing their time well? Are they fueling their bodies the right way? Those things, it's not something we can control. Players that are intrinsically motivated, the ones that, want to be better just because they want to be better, are the ones that, typically take care of themselves away from the rink more. I think as far as like a group wide motivation, it's definitely cultural. Like we certainly have expectations that we set forth in the beginning of the year. The players will set forth within their group at the beginning of the year, and they kind of have that beacon to look forward to. And first half of the year, I think it kind of is what it is. You're still kind of fresh as a team. You're excited to go, and maybe towards Christmas is when you kind of start getting a little bit mentally fatigued, or a little bit fatigued just in general. But once you have that Christmas break, you come back refreshed, and realistically, you got like 2.5 months of the season to go, and that's when you start chasing hardware like we are with the Beanpot here. So, there's always going to be ebbs and flows within the season. So, I think the most important thing is consistency, and always having that beacon to kind of reset the mindset of the team, and which I think could be used on an individual basis as well for like your tennis, all sorts of stuff like that. So yeah, I would say that we do our best to keep the players motivated, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of it comes down to them.
Yeah, I love that you give them some tools if they need it, but you get it when you're recruiting them, that you really find the players that are the good people that you want. So that's awesome, because a lot of times, like you said, people just want the best players, throw them on the team, but you guys really seem like you foster that. We want good people too. So I love that, the way you guys that you recruit. I wasn't aware of that before, but I love to hear that. So the other thing with motivation that we kind of talked about is a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Do you guys work on growth mindset at all, or is that something you're aware of?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm definitely very aware of it. I think it's not really something that we necessarily work on collectively. I think we definitely have players in those leadership roles that have those growth mindsets, and as long as they're approaching and kind of attacking the day with that mindset, that's when the younger players really start to see it. And then, hopefully that trickle down effect happens. And then, as those kids get older, the next group of players come in, and it kind of just goes into a big cycle, So, our players they always believe that they can be better than they are. They take advantage of the resources that we give them. But I don't think it's necessarily something that we go out and say, hey, you have to have a growth mindset. Why you did really well in this because you worked so hard at this. I think at this point, a lot of our players have that understanding and realize that. And I think it's something that could certainly be fostered at the youth level, and just that reinforcement. But, it takes a pretty mentally strong person to play Division I athletics in any sport, so I would be hard pressed to find a majority of players out there that don't have a mindset like that.
Okay. Yeah, and that's something that, I mean, it's good to hear for me, because that's what, we work with the youth. So being able to tell them, like, hey, this is what, a top D1 program looks for in an athlete. They expect you to, already kind of have this mindset, and, there's ways that you can grow it there, but to make it to that level, it's probably something you should already, have in your back pocket a little bit. So I think that's, a good skill to have. And I guess a question that I have for you now is, what do you look for in a youth? If you were to go to a high school game around here, what are you looking for in an athlete?
Yeah. So, from an on ice perspective, the way that I always kind of describe, and I think this is a pretty general scope of what coaches look for, is everybody's kind of got their basic, like, this is what we definitely need. Like, we need, a skater at this level. We need someone that can shoot at this level. We need someone that can make decisions at this level. We need someone that's, physically, from a strength perspective, maybe at this level. so we all have kind of like our basic skill set that we're looking for now. The pool of players in this basic skill set is huge, right? So from there, now we're looking for, okay, what are the intangibles that sets this player aside from the pack, right? What separates them? What are they going to bring to the table that, Susie, Sally, and Annie can't bring in
Mhm.
this pool of players, So I think some of it definitely depends on need of the team in that recruiting class. But if you have this basic skill set, are you an elite scorer? Are you an elite playmaker? Are you an elite skater? Are you elite defensively? It doesn't need to be just one thing. Like obviously, the more tools you have and the more intangibles you have that can make you a better player, make you more valuable to a team is better. What separates you from this group of players that's talented, but might not necessarily fit the needs of what we're looking for as a program. So do you have great character? Are you a great leader? I think leadership is, again, just kind of like what I said about having face-to-face conversations. I think it's almost a little bit of a lost art, right? Like everything's so organized at the youth level. You're not seeing. I think the weather's probably killing it a little bit, but you're not seeing kids jump out on a pond and throw sticks to each side and just go out there and play. Everything's very structured and regimented. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's the initial stages of when we're looking at players and when we're recruiting. But then it comes to, what type of person is she? How does she tick? We talk to coaches, we talk to current coaches, we talk to former coaches. If we have some sort of other connection, like maybe a parent on our team somehow, they knew a parent on the players team, and maybe we can get some information from that. We're almost like little detectives, social media. That's a
Mhm.
huge one, right? Finding stuff like that. We see one thing I always like to see is how does a player treat their parents after a game? If it's a good game, if it's a bad game. We recruit the parents just as much as we do the players. Like are the parents, I'm not going to use the word well behaved, but are they respectful like of the environment that they're in, and
Yeah.
I like hockey's a passionate game just as much with the parents and the players, but are they respectful with their approach? Will they
Mhm.
represent our program well? So there's definitely quite a bit that goes into it, but it all starts with that first, like, okay, is this player able to meet these basic needs that we have to start, and then
Mhm.
what else could she bring to the table outside of that?
Yeah, yeah. I was just gonna say, it sounds like it's yeah, you got to have that skill level, but it's a lot about the person and all those intangibles as well,
Yeah,
which is the work that we do is working on some of those intangibles. So that's great to hear. So that's when I take this back to parents and youth players, and we can be like, hey, yeah, we want your kid to perform really well, but these
yeah,
are the other things that you're looking for on top of that as well. So I
yeah,
thanks for that. We appreciate that.
yeah. There's way more that goes into it than what happens on the ice. That's for sure. Like I think there's programs at different stages in their at different stages right now, and I think that there are some programs that'd be willing to take a little bit more of a risk character wise, but I also know that there are some programs that'll say no thanks to a potential Olympian because they might not be the right fit from a locker room perspective. You see out there, you see people saying like, oh, not necessarily. I'm just saying in general, not necessarily with us, but oh, you took this kid, but you didn't take this kid. I think the other kid's way better. I'm like, yeah, well, that's certainly possible, but it's a lot of it's about fit, and a lot of it is about
Mhm.
what our needs are and what they bring to the table, or what any program's needs are, and what player A, B, and C bring to the table differently.
Yeah, I love that, the way you described the having a team fit and a player fit, because like you said earlier, like just throwing the best players all on one team isn't always going to be the option for a well running team, right? You got to have those leaders, you got to have all that extra stuff as well,
Right.
not just the best players. Yeah, I'd love to hear that. That's awesome. So then, just a couple more questions, just to wrap up here. So, are there, any unique challenges that female athletes face in hockey that you see at your level versus like if you were in the male side?
Yeah, I mean, unique challenges. I haven't coached on the men's side. I stood on a bench like maybe twice just for fun. But as far as unique challenges go, I think one thing. Again, I could be way off base, but this is just an observation and just kind of hearsay from my perspective. But I do feel like in the women's game, they are a lot quicker to put blame on themselves than they are their teammates. And I think that that's admirable, but it's also dangerous, just as far as a player's not only mental health, but also ability to bounce back. In hockey, everybody's going to make a mistake. That's just the nature of the game. It's never going to be perfect. And I know that's not just hockey, it's in every sport. But, I think what separates the good players from the great players is the bounce back. Is a player able to go out there, maybe make a mistake leading to a goal and, gear up for the next shift and be ready to go. And, it's something that I definitely talk to our players about quite a bit. And I always equate it to golf for me. Um, I'm a fine golfer, like I'm okay. I'm not earning a tour card anytime soon. But one of the things that I always struggled with when I was younger was, I'd play a couple good holes right out of the gate, then I'd have one bad hole, and it would just like destroy the rest of my round. And I couldn't tell you exactly when it was, but I kind of started approaching it. Each hole is its own little separate game, right? Like if I had a good hole, great, move on to the next one, learn from it, what I did well, how I attacked things well, and hopefully continue to build momentum. But if I had a bad hole, just saying like, all right, well, there's nothing I can really do about that now. It's just time to hit the reset button, kind of get back to how I normally play, and hopefully be able to restart and rebuild. So for our players, it's the same. We use that analogy all the time. If you have a tough shift, if you have a bad shift, or you make a bad play, like, two things. What are you going to do about it now? Like, there's nothing you can really do to fix it. And the second thing is just reset. You know what you can do. You know what you have to do, and just focus on that and move forward. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I see out of female athletes is just taking all the blame for themselves and not. I'm not saying that they should be running around and blaming other people by any means, but I think that there's definitely times where they can be quite a bit easier on themselves, and just forget and move on and approach the next shift like you would the first shift of the game.
And I again, I don't want to say, like you said before, I don't want to say this is for a fact that female athletes struggle with the confidence more than the male hockey players. But in the work that I've been doing here, I work with both sides, male and female, and I tend to notice the same thing where they personalize the blame and the losses and stuff more to themselves versus like a whole team effort.
Yeah,
And that's actually something that we work on a lot is like you're saying, bad shift, shake it off, reset, come back, forget about what happened. Not forget that you made a mistake per se, but like it's in the past, drop it, and what are you gonna do to be better?
right.
That's our big thing is yes, it sucks you made a mistake, but how can we learn? How can we be better from that mistake? That's always the key sticking point because there's always something to learn. Because like you said, hockey's a game of mistakes. It's whoever can capitalize on the mistakes the best, right? That's usually who's gonna win the game.
For sure.
So I think that's great that you see that and you can kind of help them through that. We also work on like in between periods as another time where I really help or tell athletes like take that time, think about three things you did well, two things that didn't go well, and one thing that you're going to work on to be better in. It makes worlds of difference once athletes can really like internalize those techniques and not take that blame themselves.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think back to Ted Lasso a lot too. I'm sure you've seen that. I've used the goldfish thing. Not so
Hmm.
much recently because it's been a while since I've watched it, but I remember after watching it, like I know for a fact I sent that clip out to a bunch of players here and there, and I've talked to players about it. So, and it really does make a difference. And I saw this is gonna drive me nuts, but I saw like a statistic the other day on, I don't even know if you might even want to just edit this out, but it was basically something along the lines of field goal percentage and, in basketball and what players that have a reset button or like a reset process after they miss their first couple shots and, how they do moving forward in the game and then comparing that to players that don't have that reset or players that dwell on, those first couple shots and like the statistics were just incredible. Like it was a wild, wild discrepancy between the two. But again, it's the bounce back. It's the ability to just accept a mistake and move on, and no matter how bad it is, and that typically separates the good from the great.
Yeah, and I mean, I know it's a different sport than hockey that we've been talking about, but people like Steph Curry and Kobe when he was alive and playing, like when they started missing shots, they had that ability to not personalize those misses and reset and bounce back and not change who they are, because that's a thing that people struggle with is they see that mistake they made, and all of a sudden they need to change everything they're doing, everything that they do as a player, and that causes more mistakes, right? Because they're not doing stuff that they're confident in. They're not doing stuff that they know that they're strong. So it starts,
Yeah.
building, 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 and it just, becomes a failure then.
Yep.
So I think that that's great that you brought that up. Again, I don't know the stats on it, but having that ability to reset, I can bet you those stats were really high.
Yeah, it was shocking, to be honest with you. And but again, those are people that didn't just say, okay, I'm going to have a reset button and, use it every once in a while. Those are people that worked on it, like had that worked on that skill. Because at the end of the day, it is a skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you had mentioned earlier, your brain's a muscle. You got to work it out. Just like if you're trying to improve your squat, your bench, anything in the gym, you're not just going to go in there once or twice and all of a sudden be a strong man or strong woman. You gotta put that work in. So I think that's always a huge point that I try to hammer home with parents, especially is these things that your kids are learning. Whether it's a physical skill or mental skill, they're probably not going to pick it up right away. Give them some time, give them some leeway to learn this, and then they'll get it. They will. So yeah, that was pretty much the last of the questions I really had for you. Is there anything else that you really felt like you wanted to share some insight or wisdom on before we wrap up here?
No, I think the biggest thing I would say is as far as like mental skills and all that goes is start early, just like you would in a gym. I think it's a really important and somewhat underutilized aspect of, or I'm sorry, underappreciated aspect of the game, of any
Mhm.
game. And just like working out, like learn these skills, work on them, harness them, and sometimes all it takes is for you to be 1% better than someone else to make something really, really big happen. So start early and really, really try to hone those skills.
All right. Well, that's some sage advice, I think, right there. So, thank you for coming on to the show. We really appreciate it, and best of luck to the rest of this tournament and the season for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremiah. I really appreciate it.